Now to startling new details about former President Donald Trump's alleged criminal scheme to stay in power after losing in 2020. And new reporting on what he might do if he loses again in November. Newly unsealed filings by special counsel Jack Smith include extensive evidence of a desperate effort to overturn the election. Charges the former president denies. The 165-page report is split into 4 parts. The evidence against Trump, the legal issues with presidential immunity, how Smith's evidence is not protected by immunity, and what the government is asking the court to do. In an interview with News Nation last night, Trump called Smith a, quote, deranged person, calling the filing pure election interference, going on in part to say this was a weaponization of the government, and that's why it was released 30 days before the election. The CBS News campaign reporter and attorney Katrina Kaufman is in Grand Rapids, Michigan, with more on this. So it's not exactly 30 days, Katrina. I think 30 days would be Saturday. But this filing has outlined what Smith describes as Donald Trump's private criminal conduct. What does he say about that, and what sort of evidence did he provide?
Good morning, Anne Marie. You're right. The timing of this coming out is so interesting. Also that it came out the morning or the day after the debate in which J.D. Vance really wouldn't answer this question about whether or not the 2020 election was stolen. But in this 165-page brief, we finally see all of the facts and details that Jack Smith is putting behind these allegations and supporting them with. And for one, what he does is he emphasizes the private nature of Donald Trump's conduct to show that it falls outside of being the immunity umbrella that the Supreme Court created for official acts of core powers of the executive branch. For example, when Trump gave the speech at the Ellipse, that was paid for by the campaign. He even talks about how the song that was played is not an official song that you would hear at an official event. There's really salient details in here, Anne Marie. For instance, testimony and evidence from people close to Trump, from his former president, Mike Pence, from Pence's aide. There's even one part where someone talks about overhearing Trump talking to his own family. And he said, whether or not you win the election, you have to fight like hell. There's another really compelling part where someone tells Trump that Pence's life is in danger. And Trump's response is, so what? So there's just so much evidence that we're seeing here, Anne Marie, and that the public, people who read and hear about this, are going to hear about leading up to the election, even though this case is clearly not going to trial before Election Day.
Yes, and you know, part of what he was trying to sort of outline, Smith, were sort of identifiable moments where the president was not operating as a president, he was operating as a candidate. But there's a lot of sort of blurring of the lines at that time, because there literally are people working for the campaign who were also in the White House kind of talking to him and advising him at that very same time. But you talked about the timeline. Clearly, you know, nothing is going to happen before the election. Come Saturday or so, the Justice Department is probably not going to do anything at all, because they kind of have a tradition of stopping any sort of investigations 30 days before the election. That being said, what sort of timeline are we looking at?
Well, one, about what you just said, the DOJ says that 90-day rule applies to bringing a case. So this case can continue to proceed, even though we're within that time frame. But the next steps here are that Donald Trump is going to be given an opportunity to respond to this, to provide exculpatory evidence. And they have now filed asking for a page extension, as Jack Smith also did, and a time extension. The response is due October 17th right now. So we have to see if Judge Chutkan decides to give him more time, because obviously we're really pushing up on Election Day here. The next step after that is that she's going to assess this. She's going to decide where she thinks the immunity doctrine applies, whether she thinks that all of this could go through to trial, or whether there are things she would take out. And then, of course, we are all anticipating that this is going to get appealed up to the Supreme Court, and they will get to decide if they want to weigh in. So obviously, a trial not happening anytime soon. If Trump is elected, we also know that it is very likely he would get these charges just dismissed altogether. But if he isn't, we could see this proceed, and we're now just seeing all of the damning evidence that Jack Smith has compiled here.
Fascinating stuff. Katrina, thank you.